I thank the ranking member for yielding his time. 13.7 million Americans. 13.7 million Americans are the number of people in this country whose health care are going to be stripped in this bill. Now, Republicans are going to try to tell you every single distraction in the book from that essential number. I want people at home to understand that Medicaid and the federal matching funds for Medicaid can make up 30 to 40% of some of the state budgets that we have going on back in your home. Republicans have put this bill together, rushed it together in a matter of hours on the back of a napkin, shaking it, walking out of the White House, and brought it right here to this floor.
What's up, everybody? Major retired Richard Ojeda here, and 13.7 million Americans. That's the number that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez dropped on the House floor. And man, it hit like a thunderclap.
They are defunding Planned Parenthood. They are ending tons of Medicaid coverage for 13.7 million Americans, including Affordable Care Act coverage as well. And if you want to get an abortion and have a silver plan on a healthcare plan that you paid for, you will also be affected by this legislation as well. Also, allowing suppressors on guns to be deregulated to some of the largest amounts that we have seen since the 1930s.
13.7 million Americans are the number of people in this country whose health care are going to be stripped in this bill. Not might, not possibly going to be. She didn't show up to play nice. She didn't come to swap talking points. She came with a warning.
And so I want people to understand, for my Republican colleagues who are sure what is in and not in this bill, in this process that has been this rushed, when you wake up in the morning, you will realize that you voted to defund Planned Parenthood and to take away health care from 13.7 million Americans. And when this country wakes up in the morning, there will be consequences to pay for this.
They tried to sneak this through with distractions. Rush it out of the White House, scribble it together on the back of a dinner napkin, and call it policy. But AOC stood up in front of the nation and made the stakes impossible to ignore. When you wake up in the morning, you'll realize you voted to defund Planned Parenthood. You voted to take health care from 13.7 million Americans, and there will be consequences.
We've done assessments, because if you live in a rural community, you're going to be hurt too. In New York 23, 25% of people are on Medicaid in this area of upstate New York. Westfield Memorial Hospital will be at risk of closure. UPMC Chautauqua is at risk of closure. Schuyler Hospital at risk of closure. California 23, where 46% of people are on Medicaid. Redlands Community Hospital at risk of closure if this passes. Victor Valley Global Medical Center, Loma Linda University Medical Center, all at risk of closure. Colorado 8, 24% of people in this community are on Medicaid, and Platte Valley Medical Center will be at risk of closure if these cuts pass. Who do you believe? The people who are trying to cut this, not, by the way, to cut from quote-unquote undeserving people to give to deserving people, but they are cutting these Medicaid care and these Medicaid dollars to pay for tax cuts for Elon Musk and billionaires.
She wasn't preaching to the choir. She was talking straight to every lawmaker who thinks that they can cut people's lifelines in the dark of night and walk away clean. No more cover, no more spin. If you voted for this, you're going to own it. And the daylight is coming. So let's talk about what this bill actually does. Because this is not just some line item on a spreadsheet. This is about people. This is about single moms trying to keep food on the table. It's about working folks who've been busting their asses for decades just to stay one step ahead of medical bills. It's about elderly folks on fixed incomes who already lost sleep wondering what they're going to cut next. Meds, meals, or rent. Medicaid slashed, not trimmed, not adjusted, slashed. Millions of Americans relying on it, not just to see a doctor, but to stay alive. These are cancer patients, folks with disabilities, new moms and their babies, veterans with chronic conditions. These aren't freeloaders, they're survivors. And this bill just kicked them square in the gut. SNAP benefits, they didn't just make cuts. They slapped on new work requirements that actually punish people for being poor in the first place. Think about it. Imagine being a single parent working 2 part-time jobs with no benefits, and now some rich suit in Congress is telling you that you're the problem, that you need to work harder if you want your kids to eat. That's what this bill does. It doesn't fix anything. It just adds more hoops for the most vulnerable people to jump through. And then there's Planned Parenthood. Yeah, they're coming for that too. Never mind that for a lot of women, especially in rural areas, it's the only affordable care provider that they've got. They're not just targeting abortions. They're cutting cancer screenings, birth control, prenatal care, basic health care for millions of women. All gone. Now let's talk about what actually happens when you stack all of that pain on top of a community that's already stretched thin. In Colorado's 8th congressional district, nearly 1 in 4 people rely on Medicaid. That's not just some obscure number tucked into a report. That's a quarter of an entire congressional district. You can't even walk through a grocery store without bumping into someone that this bill is about to hurt. And it gets worse. Plate Valley Medical Center, the hospital serving a huge chunk of that district, is at risk of shutting down if this bill becomes law. That's not some vague projection. That's real. That's a mom in labor with nowhere to go. That's a car crash victim being driven 40 miles because the ER shuts its doors. That's someone having a stroke and dying in the back of an ambulance because their representative decided tax cuts for the wealthy mattered more than medical care for their own damn constituents. And let's be clear, this didn't happen by accident. That vote didn't slip through by mistake. This wasn't a case of someone not reading the fine print. The congressman from Colorado's 8th was the deciding vote. He broke the tie. He knew exactly what was in this bill. He knew what was going to happen to his own district, and he voted for it anyway. He didn't vote for the people who rely on Medicaid. He didn't vote for the folks on SNAP who were already working full-time and still struggling. He didn't vote for the nurses, the teachers, the veterans, or the seniors trying to make it to their next doctor's appointment. He voted for the donor class. He voted for the corporations. He voted for the Trump agenda. He didn't just fail his district. He turned his back on it. People aren't just angry about what happened. They are absolutely furious. Think about this. Trump's been back in office for just over 100 days, and there are already protests in the streets. People are standing on corners, swarming Tesla dealerships, marching across the country and even across the world, joining together in unison against this horrific regime. And people are fed up. They're organizing. They're showing up. They're fighting back. Because when you try to rip healthcare out from underneath families and you do it with a smirk and a donor check hanging out of your pocket, you had better believe that the folks are absolutely going to rise up. And that's exactly what we are seeing. Thanks to groups like Progress Now Colorado, who've been on the front lines calling this out for what it is from day one. They've been hammering the truth into the public square, keeping people informed, holding corrupt politicians accountable, and organizing real town halls and community forums while our so-called representatives hide behind their desks. And credit where credit is due. Sarah Laughlin and her team have been absolutely relentless, and it shows. So how does this tie into AOC? What's the thread that brings this all together? That came earlier this year when she and Bernie Sanders rolled through Greeley, Colorado, right through District Number 8 on their Fighting Oligarchy tour. They made a stop at the University of Northern Colorado. And folks, the turnout was unreal. Over 16,000 people showed up in a city of about 100,000. Do the math. That's 16% of the whole entire town. Lined up, packed in, shoulder to shoulder, waiting for hours just to hear from two people who actually give a damn. Only 2,500 people made it inside. The rest watched from big screens outside, fired up and fed up. That kind of turnout doesn't just happen by accident. That's not manufactured. That's not hype. That happens when a community has been squeezed to death and finally decides that it's time to fight back. AOC and Bernie didn't roll in to give some stump speech and leave. They came to stand with the people who saw this betrayal coming long before the vote ever even happened. And when that betrayal did come, the local response blew the doors off. Progress Now Colorado organized a people's town hall in Greeley, a real one, not a telephone town hall, not a press release, a real face-to-face event with real people and real stories. And guess who didn't show up? Gabe Evans. His nameplate did. It sat right there on an empty chair while the room filled with the very people he was supposed to represent. One woman got up and gave a surprise rendition of Danny Boy that had the whole room laughing and crying at the same time. Then came State Representative Manny Rutinel. And let me tell you, he lit that place up. No sugarcoating, no notes, just truth.
Nobody should have to decide between health care, putting food on the table, or a roof over your child's head. And instead of taking accountability and showing up, he's coming out on the attack. He's attacking people like me, he's attacking all of you. I'm sure you've heard that he thinks that all of you are paid protesters. I don't know about y'all, I haven't gotten my check.
No.
I mean, at this rate, I'll spend my money on a check. At this rate, it seems less likely that we'll get a check to pay to protest, and more likely that we'll get added to some signal for government secrets.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more likely that we're going to end up getting our services cut because we want billionaires to get a third or fourth yacht. It's unacceptable.
He talked about what it's like growing up in a working class immigrant household, about watching his mom open the mail, close the door, and cry quietly when there wasn't enough to cover everything. And he said that everyone in that room already knew that over 70,000 people in this district rely on Medicaid, that our hospitals are under threat, that rural communities are being hung out to dry. And Gabe Evans, instead of showing up to answer for his vote, he vanished. That's not leadership. That's cowardice, plain and simple. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't just call out Colorado's 8th district. She called out the entire damn strategy. She got up there and laid it out plain. New York 23, California 23, and Colorado's 8th. 3 districts where huge numbers of people rely on Medicaid, and 3 districts where hospitals are on the edge of shutting their doors if this bill becomes law. In New York's 23rd, 1 in 4 people are on Medicaid. In California's 23rd, it's nearly half. And in Colorado's 8th, 24%. That's nearly a quarter of the entire population. And what do all these places have in common? They're hospitals. Places like Platte Valley Medical Center are now in danger of closing. Real towns, real patients, real lives hanging in the balance. AOC didn't just rattle off stats. She dropped a damn body count. Because this bill doesn't just kill budgets, it kills access. and it's going to hurt people in places where they can't just drive down the street to another hospital. These are rural and working class areas where one emergency room going dark means people will die. And again, it was Colorado's 8th that cast the vote to make it happen. That congressman, he was the deciding vote. That hospital, that might be gone because of him. She said it loud. When the country wakes up, there will be consequences. Because this isn't just a spreadsheet war. This is a political decision that's going to lead to real suffering in real communities with real names. Every now and then, even the guy in the tinfoil hat says something that's dead on. And in this case, that guy was Thomas Massie. Yeah, that Thomas Massie. The same dude who shows up in Christmas photos strapped like he's guarding a bunker in the hills of Kentucky. The same guy who proudly poses with tens of thousands of dollars in military-grade weapons like he's just opened a gun-themed Cracker Barrel. Half the time, Massie absolutely sounds like he's broadcasting live from the Freedom Militia Treehouse. But this time, he stepped up and said what most of his party is too cowardly or too bought off to admit, that this bill is a damn disaster.
Well, I'd love to stand here and tell the American people, we can cut your taxes and we can increase spending and everything's going to be just fine. But I can't do that because I'm here to deliver a dose of reality. This bill dramatically increases deficits in the near term, but promises our government will be fiscally responsible 5 years from now. Where have we heard that before? How do you bind a future Congress to these promises? This bill is a debt bomb ticking. Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg. If something is beautiful, you don't do it after midnight. I oppose this bill.
Gentleman's time has expired.
We're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg. And folks, he's spot on. Massie didn't dance around it. He called it what it is. A $4 trillion deficit grenade dressed up as a tax break for billionaires. He said Congress is basically lighting the fuse and tossing it over their shoulder with a wink, pretending like some magical future Congress 5 years from now is going to fix it. Yeah, sure. And I'm going to be a space cowboy by Christmas. This isn't reform. This isn't policy. This is grift. And while the rest of them are too busy playing musical chairs with lobbyists, Massie, of all people, told the truth. He stood against it before, and even though he's got all the charm of a survivalist blog post, at least the man has consistency. Yeah, agreeing with Thomas Massie makes you want to throw up a little in your mouth. Yeah, but sometimes the guy with the bunker and the bug-out bag is the only one that's saying what needs to be said. And right now, he's the only one in the GOP that's telling the truth about the direction this country is headed and who's fueling the damn engine. So where does that leave each and every one of us? 13.7 million Americans are now on the chopping block. Hospitals are on the brink. Medicaid and SNAP have been gutted to the bone. A party drunk on power, driving the country straight into an iceberg with a smile on their face and a billionaire in the passenger seat. And the deciding vote? The one that tipped the whole damn thing over the edge. That guy, from a guy who was supposed to represent people scraping by. Yeah, not the ones writing checks at Mar-a-Lago. That betrayal didn't happen in a vacuum. AOC called it out right there on the floor. New York's 23rd, California's 23rd, and Colorado's 8th, all with massive Medicaid populations, all with hospitals now hanging by a thread, all thrown under the bus so the richest people in this country could get another damn tax cut. AOC warned everybody. Massie, yeah, even Massie warned them. The people rose up. They packed town halls. They filled the streets. They sang. They cried. They stared down that empty chair and said, "We see you." And now the reckoning is here. Because sooner or later, when you vote to take food off of people's tables, when you cut the IV line and walk away, when you trade your own constituents for a campaign check, the daylight finds you. And when it does, you better pray all you lose is your seat. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.